Hey guys, welcome back to some more AFK Arena. Today we're over on the test account and we're going to go ahead and run through some numbers, and then I want to look at the plus 40 signature items that we have with all of these heroes. Now, a ton of heroes in AFK Arena. I want to see what is really going to make a difference and what's going to make an impact to AFK Arena based on the plus 40 signature items. Now, overall, when you look at your heroes and when we're looking at these emblem choice chests or the epic emblem choice chests themselves, these are going to be the only way to get to a 41 to a 50. So if you're looking to get a hero past that 40 mark, taking it from a 41 to a 50, these are the chests you're going to have. So I would really advise you to save these because, again, if you are taking any heroes up to that plus 50 signature item, you are going to have to save those. Now, looking at Scarlet here, for example, you do have the option to use either chest in here. Again, I really do urge you, because these are going to be used to take heroes further, that you use your regular red chest. Now, taking a hero from a plus 30 signature item like we see here on Scarlet, all the way up to a plus 40 signature item, it takes 820 chests. That is right, guys. 820 red chests to take them all the way up to a plus 40 signature item, which is kind of crazy. When you think, it was 300, which I know now it's a little bit less, and I believe it's going to be a little bit less. But again, 820 red chests to go from a 30 to a 40. Now, looking at the epic emblems, it's only running you 650. However, remember, they cannot go past a 41, guys. 40 is the cap for the red chest. Going 41 to 50 is going to be the epic emblems that you're going to have to use. Now, if you are using the epic emblems, if you choose to take a hero from a 30 to a 40, it is going to run you 650. And if you're going from a 40 to a 50, that is right, a plus 50 signature item is going to run you 1,360 chests. That's right, guys, 1,360 chests to get from that plus 40 mark to the plus 50 mark, which is kind of crazy to think how much of a difference that is. And again, thinking of the 1360 to go to that plus 50, you could essentially have two, even a little bit more than two heroes built up from a 30 to a 40 just based on the chest. And that's just math, guys. They broke it out a little bit over on Reddit earlier and said, this is exactly the cost. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to do this through the portraits and go through these heroes and look what these signature items are bringing to a 40, really give you my opinion on which heroes we're looking for in here. Starting with Athalia. Now, during battles, the first enemy damaged by Athalia, unable to recover energy, obtain a shield, or receive healing. As a burst hero, that's pretty big, where you're probably going to be able to burn that target down very fast. They can't heal, they can't shield, they can't get energy, but overall, Athalia's usefulness, really the power creep with her hasn't come down or hasn't scaled as well. Now, the other thing to remember, a lot of players were talking earlier about the plus 40 signature items, is it is also adding right here, dodge, physical pierce, life leech, and erosion. So you're going to have a multitude of skills, and this is what I was kind of talking about a little bit earlier when I did the videos this morning. Not only are we adding the plus 40 skill, but we're also adding from plus 30 to plus 40 and plus 40 to plus 50, which is where we're at right here at a plus 50. All of those levels of these stats, the attributes that we're adding in there with dynamic stats, going to be kind of crazy to see exactly how much they are pulling in here. And again, thinking of the original version of Athalia, not a lot of utility, not used in a lot of different places. Looking at the twins, when Layla and Elijah are in close proximity of each other, their attack rating is increased by 20. Apart from their defense is increased by 45, not going to be a requirement. Not going to be a big one in there. The only other thing, again, to kind of remember, magic resistance, dissolve buffer. Wouldn't really worry about it for this hero to build out the plus 40. Because again, damage-wise, twins don't do much damage. Survivability-wise, they don't really have many issues. Definitely a pass with the twins. Looking at Orthos, reduces the tenacity of nearby enemies by 20. That's a pretty big pass right there. Tailine's attack rating and defense rating are permanently increased by 25 and 50% every time she is reborn using Phoenix Rising. That is kind of insane. That plus 40 is kind of crazy, guys. The attack rating and defense rating are permanently increased by 25% attack rating every time she is reborn using Phoenix Rising. Now we know right here, guys, the basic one of this is 10 and 20. You're talking 25 and 50 every time she is reborn. That's kind of crazy, but of course she does have to die to get the resurgence to actually get reborn. But that is going to be a very interesting one to watch because that's a massive attack rating buff. But of course, remember, she also doesn't rely on really the attack rating. It is the health that she does have. Now looking here, we have crit, we have haste, we have dissolve, and we have armor. Again, secondary dynamics attributes that they're adding on here. Very, very interesting to see. Now, Wukong, normal attacks from the Monkey King and his clone deal additional 5% of max health. Not really going to make a big difference with that one. Looking at Flora, again, we're picking up haste, erosion, crit, and armor. Reduces an enemy's haste by 65. And ones like this, I'm not really too worried about, guys. If the haste reduction is going from 50 to a 65, the 15 points of haste will have little difference, especially because we're putting so much more attributes on heroes, you know, with different things in AFK Arena. Not a big game changer for Flora as well. Zephyro reduces the interval time between lightning strikes, thunderstorm to 2 seconds. So the crowd control in that could make a big difference in the PvP aspect. Ulna, active, grants immunity controls while using Winter Wind. So there is going to be no ability to actually get crown controlled if they're using the Winter's Call ability. So that, again, very situational, I would say, at most, with the Winter's Call being up. Looking at Muriel. When the Star Core is transferring energy to Muriel and her allies, it will also increase their attack rating by 40%. That could be a very, very strong attack rating boost. I mean, a 40% attack rating, you're going from 20% here to a 40% boost down here. Yeah, that seems pretty strong. Haste is going there. ME and Dissolve is going kind of crazy as well. But that's a pretty strong buff right there. As long as we can get Muriel to do some damage, that would work. Titus, he is a tank. When the skill Energy Orb absorbs 5 or more orbs, it unlocks the skill Final Aegis, which again just does a little bit of damage up here. Not really too worried about him. Now, Halos, of course, not used as much. Diabolus now additionally reduces the target's energy recovery rate by 30 points. Effect can be stacked 3 times. Energy recovery rate, not a big change in there. I thought it might be a little bit better. Not sure the utility for him is going to go up. Awakened Hero, the first Awakened Hero, reduces the cooldown for Blade Resurgence by 2 seconds. Simultaneously, 50% of the damage from Blade of Resurgence and burning damage ignores defense. That could be very interesting to see in like a PvP aspect. So it is going to ignore defense, which is of course going to allow it to do more damage. A Dream, the time intervals for falling meteorite caused by cosmic showers reduced to 1 second. So much faster meteors are going to be coming down. But again, it's going from 1.5 seconds to 1 second. The 0.5 seconds, I don't think that's going to amp her damage really through the roof. Now, Tarnos, of course, heavy PvP. Enemies hit by Tarnos' normal attack during that period will lose 50 haste points. Now, that's a pretty good reduction, especially thinking the PvP aspect, the treasure scramble that we use in this hero. Very, very cool. And then he gets accuracy, received healing, and insight. Interesting dynamic there. Vithiel, of course, a pretty big buffer. Every 1% bonus to Vithiel's max health increases magical suppression by 1 point up to 50 points. That's a pretty solid magic suppression for a 50-point magic suppression. I could see that being very, very strong. The awakened version of Athelia, Cleave can now be inflicted 2 times. You actually have a double chance to do Cleave. But looking in here, guys, they have crit, but 9% or 9.05 physical pierce and magic suppression, right? I think that's what MS is, the magical suppression aspect. That's kind of crazy. That's again kind of this dynamic stats right here. And that might be off on magic suppression, but we'll take a look at it. Demia damage dealt by enemies within Demia's half of the battlefield is 2 allies possessed by Dewey Network. Nectar is reduced by 60%. Again, going from 50 to 60, not really a big change in there. Liberta, let's see, our SSS hero increases health recovered per second from blast orbs and the damage dealt per second by punishing orbs by 15%. So this is going to allow him to do more damage when you're stacking the punishing orbs, and he's picking up haste. That is crazy, guys. We got a little bit of erosion in there. And then, of course, and again, I think that might be magic efficiency. ME. I'm going to have to look real quick. Let me just look at a regular hero. And again, just thinking the ME. Yeah, magic efficiency. So that is it. The damage reduction or the damage amplification for building out these heroes. Yeah, magic efficiency, guys. That's at 110 right there. A little bit of erosion. Then, of course, Gavis. After entering the battlefield, Gavis permanently increases his own attack and defense rating for 50% of the damage dealt by the enemy hero who has inflicted the most cumulative damage upon his entrance. Wow. So 50% of the damage dealt, and I'm just thinking of situations that scale, capped at 50% of Gavis' initial attack and defense rating. That's a very strong buff. That's a very strong buff coming in. He's picking up crit, dissolve, and then, of course, magic pierce, 12% on that one. And then, of course, our brand new hero, when Valkyrie's ultimate skill deals damage, each challenge the enemy possesses will reduce their energy. So just an energy reduction. Again, thinking of a ranger hero, energy reduction in there, very interesting. Then we get into the hypo heroes, guys. So enemies standing on the burning ground lose 25 energy. So an energy reduction right there, again, could be the PvP hero we're looking for. Any excessive healing for my hero converts energy into 75 energy. So from 50 to 75. So, I mean, that's a pretty solid increase of energy to allow the mesmerize effect to go up. Zolrath, our damage dealer here. After time has been reverted, Zolrath damage ignores the defense rating and damage immunity effects of enemy has less than 60% of the max health. So again, 40% to 60%. That's a pretty big buffer right there. Gets crit and some more physical pierce to really up his damage. Bizarre passive reduces, of course, now passive reduces the enemy's tenacity by 20 points. He literally just dies the very beginning of battle. Mizoth gains 800 energy at the beginning of battle. Nobody's probably still going to use them. Lucretia, as much as I love her, increases the duration of buff effects to 25 seconds. So again, going from 20 seconds to 25 seconds, not going to be a game changer because the power behind the hero really isn't there. No longer reduces damage from additional attacks when a normal attack triggers a critical strike. Again, very situational. Mortis isn't putting out a lot of damage. That one is not going to make a big difference. Leofric, another one that I've never built. Enemies struck by the scale Hellworms, they'll receive 50% more damage from all attacks for the following 7 seconds. Very situational. The 35% didn't do it here, so I'm not sure if the 50 is going to do it, building them out a little bit further. Azekis, when rays of light from the ultimate ability burning sight hit an enemy, subsequent rays deal 10% more damage, can stack up to 10 times. Again, I feel like the combat rating or the power creep for these heroes, and you can see as we're going through, they just keep getting stronger and stronger through here. Tenacity reduction is increased to 25 points. Again, going from 15 to 25, not a huge game changer in there, in my opinion. Now, the awakened version of Aziz, any enemy trapped in the nightmare accumulates damage for 70% of their max health or remains in the nightmare for 10 seconds. For awakening, additional magic damage taken during the nightmare increased by 40. So additionally, damage taken during the nightmare increased by 40%. That's a pretty big increase, guys. When you think of the damage, again, going to be interesting to see how he's used. Now, Valoris, of course, one that we don't use anymore. At the start of battle, all enemies are inflicted with the Cursed Aura. Knisan Rook, one of my favorite tanks, reduces the damage Knisan Rook takes from enemies that are chained or within the cage by 50%. Does not affect the amount of damage distributed to chained enemies. So that is going to be a big one for survivability, going from a 30% here to a 50% with Knisan Rook. Then, of course, Olgath with the damage. After Olgath's Infernal Shots have consumed all shell types, his attack rating will be increased by 6% up to 60% until the end of battle. Wow. That is kind of crazy, because even Hero was up to 40%. You're adding a 20% buff out of there. Crit accuracy and magical suppression. Yeah, that's going to be a pretty interesting one damage wise. Then, of course, the Awakened version or the Matria. Each time Cataclysmic Flame is transferred, Mihira permanently gains 15 erosion. This effect can stack up to 3 times. The 2 enemies involved in the transfer also suffer additional health loss for 300% of the attack rating. That's kind of crazy, guys. And erosion stacking here, crit damage amplification, and haste. That's a very, very strong combination for the hero. We have Lucilla here. Damage from her normal attacks dealt by both Lucilla and her silhouette is increased 320% of the attack rating. I believe that is a boost from where it originally was, but 320% of the attack rating. Again, she deals a pretty decent amount of damage. Then if you're stacking on crit, accuracy, and magical resistance, again, survivability kind of as a somewhat tank right there. Then we have Lava Tune, our mega buffer in here. Sonic Wave is Infernal Echo, reset the duration of Power Metal and its effect on allies. Very cool. So the Infernal Echo resets the duration of the Power Metal, making a strong buffer even stronger. I like that one. Then, of course, we have Eugene, not even released fully yet. When a lesser magical core or magic core explodes, it permanently reduces magic resistance of enemies hit by 5 points, stacking up to 10 times. That is massive, guys. So he has the ability to buff his own damage. That's awesome. That is awesome to see. They give him crit damage resistance, and magical pierce in there. So again, upping the damage that he is going to do. Now we get into our regular core heroes. So some of these, even Estrilda, when Estrilda is deployed, all allies receive her backline, is reduced by 20%. That, of course, when she was frontline before, they changed that a little bit. Again, not going to see a big difference in there. Stores 80 energy each time the skill is used. Energy, again, looking at the combat rating, not really going to be much of anything. Shield values increased to 300%, which from 180 to 300 might make a presence in a niche formation. Bulks grants allies with more than 40% energy a defense boost and immunity. Again, not going to have an impact there. When heroes have their energy recovery reduced by 4% for 90 seconds, again, some of these guys are not going to make a big difference. Damage is increased to 80% when the requirements are met. And again, just doing a little higher damage right there. Hendrik. All of Hendrik's attacks now do additional damage that is equal to 4% of his max health. Again, some of these heroes could have an impact, but overall, probably not that much. When nearby allies exceed 500, they will drink the potion and instantly gain 500 energy. Wow, now that is pretty strong. When nearby allies exceed 500 energy, they will drink the potion and instantly gain 500 energy. So that, of course, is going to trigger the ults right off the bat, which is awesome. So when they hit 500 energy, they're going to drink the energy potion and ult, because it's not going to hit the 900 mark. That is going to hit the 1000. That is going to hit the ult mark. So Rowan's going to be definitely one to watch. My favorite hero in AFK Arena. That goes from 30 to 50. Again, not going to be enough to make a big difference in there. Increases allies' crit rating and dodge by 35%. So 10% boost from Rosaline's own abilities. So again, increasing that crit rating for a lot of different heroes, including that awakened version of Belinda. Celia health goes from 50 to 100. Not going to make a big difference in there. Rigby explosions cause the enemy to knock down and be stunned for 6. Again, a 2-second duration on stun. Not going to be a game changer in there. Skills reduce the enemy's target attack rating by 50%. So that's a pretty big reduction. But again, overall, the hero is not putting out the damage that we would like to see. A shield will also be granted to ally with the highest initial attack rating. So now he's double shielding again. I'm thinking of some of these heroes for the towers, but then again, I wouldn't build them out for the towers. Number of times the attributes can be increased, not exceed 5 times. Not sure exactly all the garden enhancements. Number of time attributes can be increased. Again, kind of a weird cap on Peggy. Walker, the Texas Ranger. Walker's normal attack range and gains an additional 40 points of crit damage amplification. Now, if we could just get him scaled high enough to actually crit. Maro, Demonic Murmur skill, or ignores target's defense rating and deals 300 damage per second. Wow. So ignoring that defense rating, very nice. That's a pretty solid one. Scarlet, of course, every time dark energy successfully explodes, an additional 5% max health damage or damage is dealt to targets that are surrounded. So they're having Scarlet do more damage. Additional damage cannot exceed 350%. So this one from 4 to 5, 280 to 350. And then what did they add in here? Oh, physical resistance, dissolve. I wanted to see some magical pierce. I wanted to see some strong magical pierce. Unfortunately, not the case. The awakened version of Thane. Additional damage increased to 280% of Thane's attack rating. Thane's other skills will also trigger additional damage. So very nice. We're going to have to watch exactly where his damage scaling does come in, because that's increased to 280% of his attack rating. And of course, we have Sonya. 2 or more enemies are in range of Thorn Aura. Damage dealt is increased to 260. And again, some of these where it's just a little bit of a buff, not going to make a big difference. Now, Palmer. When Palmer's Faith is maxed out, whenever an allied hero deals damage to an enemy hero and their crit rating exceeds the crit block by at least 100 points, damage dealt will be increased 1% for every point, up to 50%. You're talking a 50% damage increase if you're raising up that crit rating. That's going to be very interesting, because that is a big massive damage in there. And then of course the awakened version of Belinda, burn duration goes to 8 seconds there. You're going to be able to do more damage with the burn. Now, if I remember correctly, initially when she came out, the burn was the big thing doing the damage. Wasn't so much, and that's why she worked incredibly well at lower levels, is this burn that she does possess. Then of course we have Guineas, our tank. Effects can be triggered once every 4 seconds, up to 1 time. Also, we got Jerome in here. For 7 seconds after the Ape Admiral begins following an enemy hero, the effect of the increased damage the followed target takes is raised to 75. So from 60 damage to 75 damage could, again, make a big difference in there. Then we get into our Maulers, guys. And I know it's going to be a little bit of a long video, but I want to run through these and see what they all are. I haven't looked at any of them. Shield value is increased to 100% of max health. Not going to make a difference at all. K-Sauce, as sad as I am, increases life leech. That is just a K-Sauce slap in the face. Looking at Verk, additional crossbow bolt to 200 from 120. Looking at, and I wish Nemitsu got the awakened version. That's down an offensive totem behind an enemy who's dealt the most cumulative damage for 10 seconds. Problem is the totems die in 1 hit, which kind of sucks. Energy that is recovered while injured is increased to 80, so from 50 to 80. Seems like they kind of did these for the whatever throw. Stacks wards, cardinal range, buff effect once every 2 seconds. When the effect can no longer stack, the attack goes up again. Not sure why they did a lot of buffs on some of the plus 40 signature items on other heroes. Allies that strike marked enemies have their magic efficiency increased by 40 points for 4 seconds. Allies that are struck by marked enemies, that might be interesting to see. Single target boss mode. The original version of Sophia increases Sophia's maximum attack rating by an additional 140 when Scatterbolt is active. Satrana. Enemies that possess a higher percentage of health compared to Satrana's own deal 60% less damage. Again, situational with her. Titus, good for crowd control. For the first 6 seconds Savory is triggered, hunted enemies take 60% more damage. That's a pretty good buff. Burke, increase the attack value by 30% while the shield is active. That's a decent buff, but I wish he did a little bit more damage. Skarath in here. During a sandstorm, all enemies are dealt 4% of the current health value. Ignoring the defense, maximum damage cannot exceed 100% of the Skarath's attack rating. So it goes from 2 to 4 and then 50 to 100% in there. Anoki, another tank. During the battle, attack rating is increased by 16% for every allied hero around him. So again, increasing a tank's attack rating, not going to make a big difference. Additional damage from enchanted attacks increased to 100% of the attack rating. So that could make a little bit difference from 40 to 100%. with the signature item. Daily damage dealt to the enemy that currently has the highest proportion of health to daily is increased to 45. And again, going from 30 to 45 in that one. Granted, of course, the plus 30 is there once the battle begins. Granted, marks all the enemies with a mark of petrification every 10 seconds. Unfortunately, he doesn't live. So that would be pretty quick and short-lived. Enemies that inflict that damage, Thisu shield will be inflicted with 1 stack of the Serpent's Mark. Alero in here. Enemies within a certain range of Alero lose 120% or 120 magic suppression for the following 4 seconds. Each enemy may only suffer this effect once every 8 seconds. See, they could have made it decent, but with the cooldown effect, not as effective. Number of enemies within Anasta's attack range is 2 or fewer. The attack will increase the damage they take by 45. A lot of attack buffers out of here. My big awakened version of Brutus. Increase the defense rating gained by allies affected by Inspire by 60% of the current defense. While Mountain Shield is active, he gains 25 energy recovery rate. I like that one, guys. Haste, armor, and erosion. I like the buildup of that. Salakai. Salakai's ultimate skill is in use. The percentage of direct damage counted as health lost by death deferral is increased to 50. Again, I don't feel like going to have a huge effect. For Seos, additional damage can be triggered 30 times per battle. So from 20 times per battle to 30 times. Again, thinking of full battles like boss battles where it goes the entire duration of a minute 30, that can make a difference. The awakened version of Sophia. While enemies suffer erosion, damage dealt to Sophia is reduced by 50%. Again, don't have a lot of survivability issues with Sophia, but our tiny tank right here. Adult and Idea now stack her basic attacks and venom defense, reducing up to 7 layers. So from 5 layers to 7 layers, which means targets are going to be taking more damage out of there. Magic resistance, dissolve, and crit block rating. Then, of course, the newest one, Vika gains 40 points of insight and proficiency when the gyro or the gyro is spinning at high speeds. Okay. All right, guys, a few more factions to get through. Again, I knew it was going to be a little bit longer tonight, so let's see. Health recovery is increased to 200% of the attack rating. Her attack rating is absolutely horrible. At the beginning of battle, Kaz gains 200 dodge points and crit. The increased attributes gradually decrease over time, even if they left it. And then they gave her, magical suppressing, crit damage, crit. They gave her the stat she needs, again, just with the power creep, not really there. Looking at Starfall, raises damage by 0.5 for every point of accuracy for an ally which exceeds the dodge rating. Dodge cannot be increased, or damage cannot be increased by the maximum of 50%. It can go up to 50%. This effect of skill excludes any intelligence-based allied. The effects of the extra damage doesn't count for intelligence-based allies. That just ruined it right there, guys. And they gave her accuracy and life leech. Looking at Tassie, permanently increases the insight by 15 points each time she uses teleportation. Again, not a big one there. And Almas, shield granted by Forced Oath restores 8% of the lost health. And again, it seems like these are just kind of fluff. From 100 to 120% of the health increase. Iran, time enemy is... so it goes from 4 to 6 seconds. That's a pretty good, decent duration. A 6-second freeze on there is a pretty big crowd control piece. When in the shielded state, he will recover 8% of the maximum health. Lorzen, of course, linking. When an enemy linked by the Gale Force dies, Lorzen will become immune to all damage. That would probably and could possibly negate some of the Thorn Cheese. Definitely want to look at that one. Allied recover 180% of the attack rating, which it goes from 150 to 180. So still staying along those same signs. Floral Spectre will attack 4 enemies simultaneously. The Floral Spectre never lived. That's the problem with the original version of Solus. Now Pippa's teleportation ally is immune to all damage for 6 seconds after being moved. Again, some of these really not much effect at all. After manifesting a total of 6 wind swallows, all allies have their haste increased by 35. Not going to be enough to make a difference. When Raku's health is above 80, he won't trigger his ultimate skill automatically. There we go. We finally got an update to Raku, guys. We've been waiting that forever. He gains 20 attack speed, 30 physical pierce. So his ultimate ability, we know, not super effective. So that could change something in there. Allied heroes attacking enemies are marked with Feral Bite, deal 50% more damage to them. Pretty good damage amplification. We have Peanut in here. Each time the ultimate skill, attack is increased by 40%. Damage every time an enemy receives damage from it. Burning damage is not affected. They limited her a little bit right there. Damage dealt by Violation ignores defense. Again, Oku not seen. And now Orin's one I want to look at. Each time a Vine Fern damage is triggered, Orin's attack rating will permanently increase by 4% up to 15. So from 2.5 to 4%, that's a pretty decent increase. Physical Pierce, Magical Suppression, very nice additions to Orin. Awakened version of Svea. Increases the number of times a water sprite sacrifices itself to block fatal damage. That's just a cheat death again. If there's no issue with the awakened version of Soulless Dying, that is not going to make a difference at all. When using her ultimate skill, Nevi dispels most debuffs inflicted on her allies, triggers connecting branches. Again, that could be okay. But even when you see very, very similar to the plus 30 skill that she already possesses. Cameras, enemies, heroes hit by Get Over Here have their tenacity permanently reduced by 8. Rashia, of course, a very, very big hero. Once Rashia gains 20 Feathers of Fate, each Feather of Fate she gains permanently increases her initial attack rating by 5%. So that's a pretty strong one. Going from 4 to 5, but when she gets it, it is just permanently increased, which that's what it used to do. But again, a little bit stronger, so a little bit buff in there. Awakened version of Leica. Increases the attribute bonus for sequentially increase instances of star power to 40%, but changes the maximum enchantment to 5. So you're going from 10 to 40, but you're going from up to 10 to down to 5. Attack, Physical Pierce. Wow. Crit damage amplification, and Physical Pierce. So 15% more damage with Physical Pierce. Crit damage amplification, that's going to be huge. And then a 40%. That's going to be pretty strong. Now, Aethys in here. When a beast cage exists, normal attacks deal normal attack damage dealt by him and his allies is increased by 90%. That's a big 45 to 90. Wow, that's kind of crazy. Getting into our Graveborns, guys, we're almost done in this one. Damage of these normal attack is increased to 200% of Grez's attack rating. Is that? I think that's the minions. Increased up to 200% of the attack rating. Okay, pretty good. Still going to use him. Tortured Soul Skills gains at 100% extra damage when there are one enemy. Again, staying true to the original version of Shamira. Increases damage dealt by the first 2 retaliations used by 30%. That's going to be a pretty big retaliation buff right there. Damage dealt by Void Barrage is increased to 50, which again, going from 15 to 50, that's a pretty decent damage boost. Nara, the skill Butchery, possesses an additional 50% life leech, which doesn't make a difference in there. Now, for all, of course, the crowd control. Attack rating for all enemies is reduced by 8%, and health recovery rate is reduced by 15%. Every spirit is haunted, stacking 6 times. So again, only did the attack rating reduction slightly by 3%. Abaddon, damage dealt by phantoms, normal attack is increased to 200% of the attack rating. That's a pretty big increase right there. 200% of his attack rating. Higher you build him, stronger he's going to be. If 3 allies heroes have already died, Keldar will increase his life leech attribute. Not too worried about life leech in this game. Allied heroes that have more than 50% of the maximum health receive an attack rating of 30%. So 20% to a 30% there for Silas. Odin, each time the eye reaches 2,000 Fiend points, Odin's magic Pierce permanently increased by 50 points. That's a pretty strong increase right there. When he gets that 2,000 Fiend points, they gave him what? Haste and crit damage amplification and magical efficiency. That's a good stack for a hero like that. During Toxic Transfusion, haste is increased by 30. Attack rating is increased by 45. So pretty good buff right there with Isold. Increases life leech by 50. Again, not too worried about that. What did Damon get? After using Blood Shield when the shield is still in use, Damon gains 50% of the enemy target's attack rating and 70. So again, another very 40-60 goes to 50-70 based on the build. Now Theowen, attack rating of the cursed targets is decreased by 30. Again, some of these I feel like they just kind of put in there with Mist, received 30%, so 16 to 30% less damage. Hodgkin in here, each time an enemy has their soul siphon, the damage Hodgkin deals to the damage. The enemy is permanently increased, which again doesn't do much damage. He's a tank. Each time Soul Barricade generates a barrier, it increases the attack rating of Treznar and the closest 3 allies by 60%. That again is a pretty good buff. Bane in here, for every 8 seconds the enemy is in bone prison, crit damage amplification is permanently reduced, and crit damage resistance is permanently reduced. So again, a little bit of a reduction right there. The blood sacrifice health is lower than 15%. It will be butchered. So it's going to be a death rate there, guys. Then, of course, Baden. Enemies marked by Razor Leaf will also have their tenacity reduced by 25 points and buffer reduced by 25 points. They're giving him a buff right there to erosion. Edwin, the damage of Edwin's ultimate skill is increased by 40% up to 200 each time a rebel's reprise counterattack is triggered. Again, tank doesn't do a lot of damage. When other allied heroes sacrifice their health, a puppet receives 120, so 20 more energy out of Ivan. And the big Shamira, when enchanted, Torturing Soul's ability to destroy the target's energy is increased to 300 points. Wow, that's a big, and I'm thinking PvP, guys, that is going to be a massive reduction for PvP in there. Lady Simona's storage limit goes to 1,500, so a much higher one. Then we get into our final faction with our dimensional heroes. During the battle, Naruko's increased damage from normal attacks to 250, boost the crit by 20 points. Arthur, when commanding 2 or more allies, an allied standing behind Arthur also gains the effect of Shield of Honor. Again, not a huge increase. Yukio triggers the effect when the battle begins. Not going to make a big difference in there. Now, Ezio could. The base limit of execution threshold is increased to 1,800 of Ezio's attack rating. So that is going up. So he's going to be able to execute faster with a solid build. After the attack rating is increased by 40% for 6 seconds after the action is finished. Now, Elbato, we still use attack rating of all dimensional heroes increased by 20. So from 15 to 20 for every dimensional hero that is in the allied formation. So it's not just the effect can stack up to 3 times, or the effects of the skill can stack up to 3 times in there. So the attack rating of all dimensional heroes are increased by 20% for every dimensional hero that is in the allied formation. Another pretty decent buff for all of the heroes. The ultimate skill Fallen Down deals 60% extra damage. So it's doubling from a 30 to a 60, guys. Maybe Ainz will be used again somewhere. Looking at Queen, shield duration is increased to 6 seconds. Not too worried about that. Joker, of course, the counterpart, increases damage dealt to enemies by 40% during the skill. Merlin, the amount of health Merlin loses as a result of bearing damage for its allies, again, goes from 50 to 60. Remember the cost of these guys, very high. Leonardo Cannon stuns enemies for a longer duration. The farther away it is, up to 5 seconds. So cannon duration getting a little bit of an extension. Baba Yaga. After attributes stolen by the skill Soul Pilfer are returned to the enemy, permanently retains their attribute values. Each retained attribute cannot exceed 40% of the initial value. So from 20 to 40, that's a pretty big change there. Joan of Arc, after she places the strike, they take 32% less damage. And there's our notification. Geralt is in here. Every time the enemy world hits Geralt's critical damage amplification increases 8 to 25. But again, not going too high on there. So they're capping them a little bit lower. Magical Barrier exists for 30 seconds. So the duration changes a little bit in there. Now Mulan, again, if she parries the skill, any subsequent damage it deals to her will be reduced by 50%. Not worried about the survivability in there. Now, Amelia, frozen enemies lose 100 energy. Not only are we gaining energy, but enemies are going to lose energy. Then, of course, Rem. All damage Rem deals with her Morningstar is increased by 40%. So from 30 to 40%, 75% of the additional damage ignores the enemy shield. So 10% damage buff right there. Then we have Robin Hood. When Robin Hood's enhanced crossbow hits an enemy, it reduces their energy by 80 points, converting it into 4 coins that drop on the battlefield. Wow. That is crazy with the heroes that are in here, guys. Crazy, insane looking at the plus 40 skills. Definitely going to be some standouts in there. And again, we're going to have to come up with a tier list. We're going to have to systematically go through here. And I wanted to check them all out because I hadn't seen a majority of them, almost all of them at this point, but very cool. So we're going to have to see exactly how it affects different game modes, where we're building heroes past that plus 30 and who we're building past that plus 30. But that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.